So in this video I want to discuss a case that I read about there a few days ago. It's an employment law case. It's to do with constructive dismissal, but more importantly it's to do with filling out the WRC complaint form, the online complaint form. In this particular case, the individual had left the job, had resigned from the employment, and it was his intention to bring a claim for constructive dismissal against his former employer. However, when he's filling out the online complaint form on the WRC website, which is what you're supposed to do, he ticked the box for minimum notice and terms of employment. In other words, he ticked the wrong box. He didn't tick the box for unfair dismissal. However, in the body of his complaint, he did make it clear that he felt it was a case of constructive dismissal, and that was the case that he wanted to bring. However, the employer made the argument by way of a preliminary objection to the hearing of the case at all, on the basis that the adjudicator, the adjudication officer, did not have the jurisdiction to hear the case, because the case was or should have been one for minimum notice, and they were being asked to defend the case of constructive dismissal. So essentially the argument from the employer's representative, which was IBEC, was that the case should be struck out. Jurisdiction wasn't with the WRC to hear it. The gentleman in question, the employee, had filled out the form incorrectly, ticked the wrong box, and they also made the point that he would have received a number of letters from the WRC confirming receipt of his application and communicating to him when the hearing was, and so on. All of the letters he would have received, however, from the WRC would have made it quite clear that the claim that he brought was under the Minimum Notice Act and not under the Unfair Dismissals Act. That was the preliminary objection, and it was a critical decision to be decided or determined by the adjudicator. The adjudication officer, to make a long story short, decided that he could hear the case. It could go ahead, because he made the point that there was Labour Court decisions and EAT decisions to the effect that the form itself, the WRC form, is not a statutory form. And even though the wrong box was ticked, the critical and important thing was, in the body of the complaint, the employee had made clear he wished to bring a case for constructive dismissal. The adjudication officer then held that on that basis the employer knew the case that he had to meet, and that was critical. He wasn't being taken by surprise, he wasn't being ambushed, he knew the case he had to meet, notwithstanding the fact that the employee ticked the wrong box. Not only did the employer know the case they had to meet, but they had actually prepared for that case, for the constructive dismissal case. So in the first instance, the employee won that round, as it were, insofar as the WRC adjudicator decided he could hear the case. However, when he went ahead to hear it, he found against the employee and found that the employee was not constructively dismissed. And the employee had made a number of fatal mistakes in relation to constructive dismissal, or bringing a claim for constructive dismissal. The first one was that in his resignation letter, he actually thanked the employer and wished them well in relation to his employment and wished them well for the future. That, as the adjudicator said, is not indicative of a man who is leaving his job because of the unreasonable conduct of the employer and because of a towering sense of grievance. That's clearly not the case. So, in order to bring a claim for constructive dismissal, you must be in a position where essentially the employer has repudiated the contract, and you as an employee have felt that you've no choice but to leave the job because you have been treated so badly, the conduct of the employer has been completely unreasonable, and he or she has essentially repudiated the contract. That is clearly not the case in a situation where you write a resignation letter thanking the employer for your experience and wishing them well in the future. The second fatal hurdle that he failed to get over was, in a constructive dismissal case, 95% of the time, you need to show that you have exhausted the internal grievance procedure in the workplace in order to raise or ventilate whatever issue you have. This the employee had not done in this situation. So on those two tests, on those two hurdles, the employee came a cropper and lost his case. It's an interesting case though, because a lot of employees, in my experience, do fill out the online complaint form incorrectly and can quite frankly make a rocks of it. But it may or may not be fatal, and it probably won't be fatal if in the body of the complaint the employee makes it clear what case they're trying to bring. Therefore the employer will be on notice of what the complaint is. Secondly, if you are leaving your job and you intend bringing a claim for constructive dismissal, you need to exhaust the internal grievance procedure in the first instance, and you certainly don't write a letter to the employer thanking them for the good time you had, the experience, and wishing them well in the future, because that is not indicative of a relationship which you have just terminated because of the egregious, unreasonable behaviour of the employer. Hope you find this video useful. If you do, I would appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below, and you may be interested in subscribing to my YouTube channel. On my YouTube channel I explain in plain language various aspects of Irish law, including property, small business, employment, probate, wills, family law and so on, litigation, personal injuries and all that good stuff. So if you're interested, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.